good morning, lovely ladies and gentlemen. Steve Collins coming to you from gorgeous, beautiful, amazingly foggy and misty San Antonio, Texas, the second most powerful, passionate, purposeful coach and speaker in the world. You guys are ready to rock and roll on this Friday. I bet you are. Hey, let's start real quick before I go into this discourse on why it is you may find yourself stuck. Okay, why it is you may find yourself stuck. So let's start with this real quick. What were your thoughts this morning when you first woke up and you looked outside and you looked around you? My guess is if you are subject to programming, which we all are, programming, you were raised, if your parents played the news in the background when you were getting ready in the morning for school as a child growing up, and if they had the TV or the radio on, every time it was like this, the weatherman would say, "It's nasty out there today, y'all. It's nasty out there today. It's gonna be nasty today, y'all." And you were programmed to have a response that is now a tape running around in your head that when you see a day like today, if you haven't thought it through, you think, oh, it's nasty. What would happen if a weatherman would have gotten up and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, it is San Antonio, Texas. In San Antonio, Texas, we rarely get this type of weather. It's always hot and sunny and crazy. Guys, it's going to be an amazing day. It's going to be a wonderful day. It's misty. It's foggy. It's mysterious. It's like driving through a cloud in a dream. It's incredible. You guys are going to have a wonderful day today." They don't say that, do they? What is the programming going on in your head? So I want to address something today for specifically people of faith. I'm going to start with the story, but I'll begin with the verse. "Before I was afflicted, I went astray, but now I keep your word." And shortly after that, it says, "It was good for me that I was afflicted, that I might learn thy statutes." So let's talk a little bit about that. If you are a parent and you have children, you know there are times that you impose a stricter disciplinary action or a more severe disciplinary action not because you're angry at your kids or because you're mad at your kids, you want to make their life miserable, you're trying to control them, because you love them. Because you love them. So let me tell you a true story that happened in ancient times in Israel where primarily there were shepherds everywhere, and this may shock you to learn this. So the shepherd was responsible for the flocks of sheep in ancient times and still in this time, but this is a practice that may blow your mind to hear about. If there was a particular sheep of that flock that was regularly rebellious and regularly walked off on its own and regularly got away from the safety of the group, the shepherd was not trying to control the sheep. He wasn't trying to, "Oh, you sheep, you can't have fun." The shepherd was not trying to limit the sheep. The shepherd was attempting to protect the sheep. You see, there's strength in numbers, and solo sheep can become wolf bait very easily. So there was a practice they used to do that might seem Neanderthal to you, and yet it's powerful in how it plays itself out. And here was the practice. If there was a particular sheep that strayed from the herd regularly, or the flock regularly, and caused the shepherd grief, having to go after it again and again and again and again, here's what the shepherd would do. The shepherd would take the sheep, put it on its lap, extend one of its legs between a couple of rocks, and take its staff and break one of the sheep's legs. Surprised? He would break the leg of the sheep that continued to stray. Why would he do that, you might ask? Here's what's fascinating, ladies and gentlemen. For the remainder of the time that it took for that sheep's leg bone to heal, the shepherd would put the sheep around his neck and carry him. You see, during that affliction, for its own good, the shepherd would carry the sheep. And here's a fascinating result. The fascinating result of this, which you might think as a harsh practice or aminocruelty, you'll get over it, was when the sheep's leg healed, guess which sheep in that flock never left the shepherd's side? You guessed it. That sheep. Right there, up against the shepherd for the rest of its life. It was right there. Because you see, during that season of healing and pain, it did not wander off and say goodbye for good. It was drawn close. It was connected to. Where the shepherd went, the sheep went. What the shepherd did, the sheep did. What the shepherd said, the sheep heard. The sheep and the shepherd actually connected during that season of healing after the affliction took place. And once that shepherd put that sheep down, baby, not only did it not wander anymore, it was right by the shepherd's side. So I ask you this today, why would the psalmist say, before I was afflicted, I went astray, but now I keep your word. It was good for me that I was afflicted, that I might obey thy statutes, O Lord. Why do you think? You know King David was a shepherd, right? He sure was. He knew how it went. He knew how it went down. Well, I think he was a guy who blew it a lot. Y'all anybody know a guy who blows it a lot? Yet he was known as a man after God's own heart. A man after God's own heart. Even though he blew it, and he blew it, and he blew it, and he blew it. He was loved by God, and sadly though, even though he was forgiven in the eyes of God, King David, there were horrific and long extending consequences for David's infractions. You see, he was forgiven by God, yet the consequences of those decisions played out in his life for the rest of his life, affecting his family and bringing him a tremendous amount of grief towards the end of his life. Like John Wayne says, life is hard. It's even harder when you're stupid. Most of what happens when people say, well, you know, Steve, you know, everything happens for a reason. True, sweetheart. Sometimes that reason is you're stupid, you make really bad choices. So get you some wisdom. Read you some of that Bible. Get in the book of Proverbs. Get in the book of Psalms. Learn a little bit about it. So I ask you this today, my friend. Do you find yourself in a season of affliction? Could it be that you've been wandering and you don't even know it? Could it be that you have been forget it and you don't even know it? Could it be that you're outright, I don't want nothing to do with you? There is one, a shepherd, who loves you so very much, loves you so very much, that from time to time, he may allow something to happen, to come into your life, to create opportunity for you to spend some time together, for you to reconnect, for you to see what the shepherd sees, hear what the shepherd hears, listen to what the shepherd says, so that ultimately, the ultimate goal, like the sheep in ancient Israel, is once it's back on its feet, it stays right by his side. Before I was afflicted, the psalmist says, I went astray, but now I keep thy word. It was good for me that I was afflicted, that I might obey thy statutes. And ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you unequivocally, you guys already know this, I for sure was that sheep for a while. And even after I met my good Lord and Savior Jesus, for a while, I blew it. It went from behavior blowing it to now in my later years, 28 years of walking with him, now the behavior is not so much an issue. It's really my thoughts, keeping my thoughts in alignment with what I believe the shepherd's thoughts are, and ultimately walking in the kind of love that he shows me to people like you that choose to watch this today. So I ask you that question today. Are you in a season where you are constantly walking away? Don't do that. Get close to the shepherd. He loves you, man. He's got good for you. He'll make you lay down in green pastures. He'll put you beside still waters and give you peace. He'll provide for you. He'll create rivers in the desert for you. He can do all kinds of cool stuff, guys. My suggestion on this wonderful Friday, ask yourself the question, are you wandering? Are you out there? Are you afflicted? Maybe it's time for you to reconnect to the shepherd. Have a great day, guys.